This is Standard Office Procedures, the podcast that helps professionals live and grow through culture, communication, and candor. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Standard Office Procedures podcast. I'm your host, Grace, and with me in the studio as always is Shannon.
Hello.
Hi, Shannon. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good.
Shannon looks very cute today. You guys, let me paint you a picture. She's wearing some nice jeans, dark wash, and a t-shirt that has, what color would you call that?
It's like a coral
Like
color.
a coral and white horizontal stripes. And then a jacket it's one of those jackets that looks like a button-down shirt.
The
I'm talking
jacket.
about? I'm sorry, a jean jacket. I've never heard of such a thing. Is that a denim? Is it denim?
But it's also like a terracotta
yeah.
color.
Oh, that's a good color
All
description.
from Stitch Fix.
And your lipstick is terracotta. So you're looking she's very coordinated today. I love it. So it's me and Shannon. She's looking very cute in the studio.
Now that we've spent 5 minutes describing what we're wearing.
Look, I think the people needed to know.
Grace is wearing an olive sweater. She looks adorable as well.
I am. I'm teaching yoga today clothes, so it's low effort. Anyway, so we are talking about...
Did you want a podcast today?
I don't know, honestly. What do the people even want?
Listen, this is perfect because we're going to talk about small talk. So
that was... Okay, so here's an example of how not to make small talk is to describe someone's outfit to somebody else. That's very weird, serial killery. But yes, the topic today is essentially how to make small talk, how to be approachable at work. So I feel like this is a good topic because for people who are either newer to their companies or you work at big companies or, you're just kind of a little bit quiet or introverted.
Shy, socially awkward.
Little shy, little socially awkward.
A little bit away.
Oh my gosh. If I had more time, I would tell you all the stories of my social awkwardness. But I do feel like this is something too where if you're somebody who you're trying to you want to get ahead in your career, and maybe it's been communicated to you or you're aware that people think of you as somebody who isn't incredibly plugged in. It might be time to try to branch out a little bit and do some more casual socializing within your workplace. But if that sounds like pulling teeth to you and you're not excited about it, we're going to teach you how to do it. We're going to talk about how to do it effectively.
Just do it.
Just
talk
I know,
to
right?
People.
So much advice is just be better. Just stop doing the things that are bad and do the things that are good. And that's kind of how this advice is a little bit. A lot of it is, just like anything else, small talk and the art of kind of striking up conversation with anybody is a soft skill. And we talk a lot about soft skills on this podcast. And what that means is it's something that oftentimes people will think oh, I either am or am not this. I'm either a confident person or I'm not a confident person or, whatever. And the truth is that you can become these things through practice. Yeah. So if you're oh, I'm just not good at small talk. I'm just not good at socializing with people I don't know.
Do it and be bad at it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like anything else. It's it's an Adventure Time quote that I think of all the time where it's the first step to getting really good at something is sucking at something.
I like the Brene Brown quote. She talks about the shitty first draft.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as a writer, God, that is so true. Yeah. None of my first drafts are good. So I do think that keeping that in mind as we discuss this, that it's not like you're going to go, if you're somebody who's not accustomed to or not comfortable making small talk with strangers or, acquaintances, don't have to be complete strangers, you're not going to go out there and hit a home run probably on the first try. Maybe you will. Maybe you have a knack for it, and that's awesome.
A secret knack you never knew you had.
Secret knack for socializing. But I do feel it's okay to remember that this might be a little awkward at first and it will probably feel strange to just go up to a person and be so how about the weather? Or so it's really chilly outside today. Huh? It will feel a little bit weird. But I think what's important to remember when we're talking about this stuff and talking about kind of overcoming the anxiety attached to it is that everybody is more or less having the same thoughts that you are, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, with the exception of creepy people,
yeah,
I can't think of a single time where somebody's approached me and made small talk that I've been upset about it.
No. I think in general, I was actually telling my daughter about this the other day. She has an audition coming. She goes to a theater school and she has an audition coming up. And she was like, do you have any tips for not being nervous? And I was like, well, practice, practice, practice. And I was like, also think about when you are watching this group perform, you're just enjoying them perform. You're not picking apart their performance, you know? And so not that small talkers performance, but I feel like it's the same thing. We're we're so much more worried about ourselves than what other people are doing. And that is exactly what's happening in small talk. If you're going to go up and just kind of chat with somebody or talk with somebody before a meeting or, try to get to know somebody at a work event, they're really probably thinking about themselves and how they look in their outfit and them trying not to say something stupid a whole lot more than they're thinking about what you're saying.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I do think it's important to note too that, so we talked about kind of from the lens of people who are more shy, how this can be nerve-wracking for them. For people who are, who are pretty comfortable making small talk, but you get kind of anxious and stressed out when you encounter someone who is more introverted.
Oh, yeah.
And not super receptive to it. I know that's more my problem. Like I'm pretty comfortable talking to like a brick wall, but when I encounter someone who's acts like a brick wall, who just like does not engage with me, I get pretty stressed.
Well, that's our empathy.
Yes.
I mean, that's our empathetic tendencies where we soak up the energy of the other people that we're with.
Exactly. And if you're making an attempt, if I go up to, Shannon and I don't know Shannon very well, and I'm like, oh man, it's chilly outside today, huh? And she kind of glances at me and like nods, or maybe just like, yeah, very dismissively, like that sends me into like a little bit of a tailspin where I'm like, oh no, what have I done? I said something rude, or maybe I looked at her weird, or I don't know, I made her uncomfortable. And the reality is that maybe in this instance, my conversational partner just doesn't really want to engage, right?
Yeah, or distracted, or kind of shy, or like just having a bad day.
Yeah,
or,
there's all kinds of reasons that could be why the person that you're trying to connect with, who the connection is just not happening.
Yeah.
It's not reflective upon you necessarily.
You know what's funny? This actually happened to me last night. I went to this event that our boss was speaking at. And, it was a networky kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Lizzie was there. Lizzie that we work with. Mm-hmm. I'm so close with Lizzie. She's great. And we were sitting there and we were kind of making small talk or whatever. And I was so distracted and my stomach was hurting.
Aww.
And I didn't feel very good. And I was a little nervous because it was like, I want to make a good impression on these strangers. And I was like, this morning in the shower, I was like, oh my God, I really need to apologize to Lizzie. I was just like not with it. And I hope that she didn't take offense to that. And I know Lizzie, and of course she didn't. But I feel like that's a very good example of even somebody that you know really well, and you're just sitting kind of making small talk professionally or whatever.
Yeah.
Like maybe something else is going on with that person.
Yeah. I would say don't be so quick to jump to yourself as the problem.
She's
on
mad
both
I did
sides
something.
of the fence. Yeah. So like both, if you're somebody where your small talk's falling flat with somebody else. Yeah. It's not about
I'm a dork.
that. We all do that though, right? Like Shannon, I think you're especially bad about this, about like hours later, you're like still overthinking a comment that you made.
Oh, I for sure did that. I actually got a drink with our boss after last night, and and then on the way home, I was like, oh no.
You do that every time.
Every single time, which is so silly because of all the people.
It's Owen.
It's Owen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing.
I know.
It doesn't matter. And then that's what I kept telling myself. And here's an example. I used to really, really overthink that stuff. But like the more you do it, the more you realize like not a big deal. This is an example of practice.
Yes.
And like you just get used to it. And it's like, whatever. Like I thought about it for a minute and then I was like, whatever, I got over it.
Yeah. I think so much of our anxiety that surrounds like, I'm nervous to start like stepping out of my shell in whatever capacity, specifically right now, obviously this kind of small talk socialization approach, like the anxiety comes in because you don't know.
Right.
You don't know what's going to happen. That's, I think, what makes you so fearful is not like, oh, I'm scared of what if they think I'm dumb? Like that is a very specific thing. And then if you kind of unpack that, you can realize like, honestly, it's not that big of a deal. But I think what's bigger than these specifics are this I don't even know how it's going to go.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the more you have like a well of experience to be like, I'm pretty sure I know how this is going to go. You know, this can go one of a couple of ways here. Either it's going to go great, either it's going to crash and burn, but then I also know that I'll survive, you know?
I'll survive. Yeah. I think that's the big thing is like do it. And then sometimes it'll go great. Sometimes it won't go so great. And this is another thing. You're so worried about what that other person thinks or what you said or whatever. Here's the thing. If they don't come to you or they don't express to you that it bothered them or they didn't like it or they think you're a huge dork or whatever it is, that is not for you to carry. That is for them to carry. Yep. So that is a very good mindset shift to practice. And that's what I do. You know, I'm like, you know what? If they're not going to say something to me about it,
it's not my responsibility.
That's not my responsibility.
Yep. No, you're completely right. And I also think it's important to remember that, you know, we're talking so much about how this is anxiety inducing because of all the internal like self-reflection that you're doing about your own actions and thoughts. The other person we are all wired the same way. We as human beings are preoccupied with ourselves. That's not a selfish thing or a narcissistic thing. That's just human nature.
That's human.
Yeah, that you know yourself the best and you're the most attuned to what you are doing. And so it is very likely that if you have a conversation with a stranger or with somebody you don't know very well, like they're not thinking about all the things that you're doing weird and wrong. They're thinking about all the things that they're doing weird and wrong, you know? And unless you find like the most secure person on the planet. But anyway, I don't know them. So I don't think it's a problem. But anyway, so let's talk about how to be more approachable at work. And this kind of goes both ways. Some of these are more general advice. So I think the first thing to talk about is body language.
Ooh, that's a biggie for me.
It is a big one. So I think that oftentimes we forget when we discuss topics about like around communication. We think of like verbal communication, words, whether it's writing or speaking. So much of communication is nonverbal.
Yeah. I mean, especially because that is before you even start talking.
Exactly. So consider that when not only when you're trying to sort of decide whether or not you should speak to somebody, but also when you're presenting yourself, right? If you're trying to be somebody who's a little bit more open to connection, I would check how you're standing, your facial expressions, how you're sitting, even like how you respond to people when people talk to you. Do you turn your whole body to face them and show that you're engaged, or do you continue like doing what you're doing and you don't really make a lot of eye contact? You know, all these little things that are an integral piece of the human connection experience. Like when you're talking to somebody, I'm going to get very conscious of it now as I look at you. But like when you're talking to somebody and you're engaged with them, I feel like, you know, eye contact is underrated, but it's incredibly important. I will say, and I've said this before to like my close friends and probably on the podcast, that I look at mouths. I don't know why. Like
weird.
I don't.
That? I look at eyes,
which is amazing. I usually look at your mouth when you're talking. And I think it's because, look, I have a theory about this. I was raised in a different country when I was younger. And so I was learning a foreign language. At the same time, I was still kind of getting a grasp on English. And I think I would read lips a lot, trying to figure out what was going on. Anyway, that was a little aside, little fun trivia about Grace.
Oh, it's a fun little Grace, you know, just raised in a foreign country.
All of my friends, I bring up the fact that I lived in Belgium maybe twice a year. And every time I do, all my friends
it's
roast
great small
me
talk.
for it.
It's great small talk.
So that's my small talk go-to. Hello, you know I lived in Europe. Like,
you've never lived in Europe.
I'm different. Anyway.
So I was going to say, I think we tend to, in today's day and age, like if we're not really sure how to make small talk with somebody, or we're not feeling, I don't know, maybe we want to be more approachable. We don't understand why people are coming to us. I see this with my daughter a lot. And I've noticed that I used to have a really big tendency to do this too, where I was like, why don't people talk to me? Why don't they want to be my friend? Why don't they come to me? And it's like, because you're not going to them. You're not being approachable. You're always looking down. You're always kind of keeping to yourself, like waiting for them to come to you. So if you're sending off signals by looking down, really focusing on what you're doing, maybe you're at the water cooler and you're really, really paying attention to pouring that water, you know, or huge thing we do now is we just look at our phones. Down, looking at your phone. I'm thinking about like conferences I've been to. I think I talked about this on a past podcast. There's people sitting at a table and they're upright and their shoulders are up and maybe they've got a cup of coffee or there's something to do with their hands, but they're kind of looking around. They're
looking engaged with the environment.
They look up, maybe they're doing something, but they look up at you when you get close. That's body language. You're not even talking yet.
All the communication that has just happened in the scenario you described, that is all a ton of communication, right?
Yes.
The people who are sitting looking at their phones, they're communicating, I'm busy, don't talk to me. The people who are sitting with their coffee, looking kind of out of the room, making eye contact with you as you come by, maybe giving you a little smile. Their communication is, basically it's like, I'm open for a conversation, you know? And I think a lot of us kind of grew up with this trope. I mean, so, you know, those of us who are in our early 30s or late 20s, where there's like a girl on a bus with her headphones on and like somehow still the love interest is like, hey, what are you listening to? You know, guess what? If you're sitting somewhere with your headphones on and you're not making eye contact, no one's going to talk to you.
You have to go talk to them, or you have to at least be approachable. And I think this is very important for people that start to get busier and in more important leadership roles. Because if you want to be somebody that make people feel like they can come and talk to you, and every single time this person sees you that's not in a meeting, like actively in a meeting, you are looking down at your phone, you're busy, you're going somewhere, you're focused on something. I get it. I am busy. We all have things to do. But like if you can take a couple minutes, put down your phone, put down your computer, look at people in the eye, you're going to be more approachable and they're going to feel like they can come to you with stuff.
So I know we pick on Owen in this podcast sometimes, but
does he listen to this?
I don't think so. I mean, he loves sports.
He pays for it, but
I don't think he listens to it. Owen is our CEO, and
we love you, Owen.
We do very much. He's a very approachable, friendly, chatty guy, right? And Shannon and I have worked here since the beginning, pretty much. We've been working here for a long time, and so you and I knew him as more casual CEO Owen, who would come in like a rumpled t-shirt and just like sit on the couch and like chat and shoot the shit. And that's kind of how it went. And so I'm very comfortable with Owen as a person because I know, again, talking about practice and experience and all that anxiety, I know for a fact that when I talk to Owen, it's going to go okay. I'm comfortable with that because I have enough experience. Now, people who are newer to our company, in the last year or so, Owen's started to carry himself a bit differently because, you know, he's really kind of growing into this role and this company's getting bigger. And so understandably, I think he's trying to align himself more with what kind of a CEO, quote unquote, is. Now, Owen struggles because he is like, I just want everyone to see me. Why are people stressed and intimidated by me? I'm just this approachable, chill guy.
Bro.
The fact of the matter is his body language has shifted from flopping on the couch and like tipping his head back and smiling at you, which is how he used to kind of open conversation, to now, you know, if you see him in the hallway, he's generally on his AirPods.
Yeah.
AirPods. What?
AirPods.
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 It's like Airbud the
How does
movie.
that work?
Like the Gold Retriever movie. I don't know. Anyway, he's on his AirPods, like having a call. So his head is down, his eyes are on the floor. You know, like his shoulders are a little bit hunched. Like maybe he's wringing his hands, maybe his arms are crossed. The point being that now when you catch him kind of in between meetings, he's not like signaling like, oh, come talk to me. You know,
if you get to the conference room 5 minutes early, he is heads down working, typing.
Yes.
Like it kills me.
So that's the thing. Like there's really no body language opening that says, approach me, I'm ready to chat. You know, instead his body language is very much conveying, I'm very busy. Do not interrupt me.
Yeah.
And then he expresses to me, why do people think I'm intimidating and not approachable?
Yeah.
And I don't think he's understanding that, yes, he is that easy to talk to guy, but it's wrapped up in this exterior of this very don't talk to me, like a CEO, you know, this busy. And so that's kind of a great point about this nonverbal communication, about this body language communication, is that Owen is wanting more connection with his employees, but he's also signaling to them, I'm very busy. Don't talk to me. Like, don't approach me.
We should talk to him about
this. We should. I'm like, as we're talking about this, I'm like, I really need to have a conversation.
I really didn't think about it much before this, but I think that is very much what's happening. Is that with him, it's not what he says, it's his body language.
Because when he does speak, you know, he's the same as he always was. He's playful. He's funny.
So kind.
Yeah, he's very kind, and he'll listen to anybody. You know, if anybody ever needs anything in this company, he's always said, here's the thing. He always says, my door is open, right?
Yeah.
He is saying the words. So this is another great point, is he is saying, please come talk to me. I am open for communication, right? With his words.
Yeah.
With his body, he is saying, do not talk to me. I'm very busy. Yeah. And that's called a double bind. And that's a whole other conversation.
Ooh, is that a literary device?
It's a therapy term, right?
Oh, so a therapy device.
Yeah, it's when you get put in a double bind is when your body language is saying one thing, but maybe you're verbally saying another. And anyway, so
God, that's a whole other
It's really a whole other podcast. Yeah, but that's what he's doing here. So being cognizant of your body language. If you're in a similar situation as Owen, where you're thinking like, I don't know why people used to come and talk to me, but now they don't. Maybe kind of take stock of, have you changed a little bit? Like, have you gotten busier?
Yeah.
Which is, you know, oftentimes a good thing that comes with promotions and more responsibility. But if you've gotten busier and, you know, your body language is saying, I'm very busy, that might be why people aren't approaching you as much, which is okay. It just might mean that you need to take the first step and you need to open yourself up a bit more and initiate conversation.
Yeah. And it's not like always do that, you know, just take a couple minutes here and there. Make a conscious effort, you know, maybe a few minutes before a meeting or as you're walking through, to like look up from what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So some ways to kind of have open body language are obviously, you know, we talked about eye contact. We talked about kind of having, I mean, there's science that says when your chest is like open and facing the room. Yeah. If chest is up and open, you're literally, there's like associations with the heart there. So you're kind of making yourself vulnerable and exposed to other people.
Vulnerable?
You look powerful, to be quite honest. Shannon put her shoulders way back. But yeah, and then again, like if you have a watch or a phone, you're trying to, if you're in a situation like a conference, or maybe you're at a park and you want to connect with the other, I don't know. What is this, the 1990s? Like, when you go to a park and your name is Meg Ryan and you're looking for your Tom Hanks. Anyway, but yeah, if you're somewhere and you want to engage, then again, shoulders back. I don't know why I said shoulders back. Chest out, eyes open.
Up.
Yeah,
you know, there's a difference between like hunched down,
exactly,
and
like
shoulders
that
curved
closed
and
body language versus that open,
up and open.
Exactly.
It's not like you don't have to do a power pose. Like
yeah, I know. I keep saying shoulders back. I don't want you guys to envision like Superman. You know how he stands? Yeah, it's generally just like chest out, eyes open, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, let's move on from that. Another way to make yourself more approachable. Listen, guys, I know this one is a little bit controversial, but smiling. There is a difference between a random man on the street saying to you, oh my gosh, you'd be so much prettier if you smile, which is harassment. And that's a whole nother thing. But versus like just the knowledge that it's a little funny because we've all experienced it. If you're a woman, it's terrible. I hate being told to smile. First of all, because I'm literally always smiling.
The worst.
So if I'm not smiling, you know I'm having a bad day. And when a stranger's like, you'd be prettier if you smiled, I'm like, I know. Why do you think I'm trying so hard? Anyway, but smiling is like, it's just proven to, I mean, you know, when you smile at somebody, when you make eye contact and you smile at somebody, it is, again, a nonverbal signal that you have already made a connection, right? You are not noticing them, so you're making eye contact, and then you're smiling, so you're signaling to them, this is a safe, pleasant, like, you know, I am open to a conversation. I'm open to connecting with you, right? Versus making eye contact with somebody and just like turning away, which that's a little bit more of a signal where it's like, I don't even want to engage, right?
Absolutely.
So I just think that smiling, you don't have to go through life just smiling all the time.
No, I mean, don't be fake. But I do think even if you're not smiling, just being cognizant of like, do you have a scowl on your face?
Yeah.
Like, do you have a resting bitch face?
Which I do. I have really pointy features.
Yeah. And I mean, cool. It really doesn't matter. But you can also make yourself like relax your face a little. It's body language. Yep. It's the same thing. Or, maybe if like we are all very empathetic creatures. We talked about this already. Like we soak up the energy of other people. We all know those people. They come in and you can just see that they are having a bad day all over them. But are you doing that like every day, all day,
without even meaning to?
That's not approachable.
Yeah, and it could be like we just talked about RBF, or resting bitch face, where maybe that really, like, I get it. Maybe that really is how your face is. And I feel that
no
struggle.
Shame.
But I have learned to overcome my resting bitch face by, if somebody, because I've been told before, I've been told I type really angrily. I've been told that I look really mean when I'm focused. Like, I feel like I've been told all these things about how, oh, you look really mad when you're working. And I'm like, I'm just working. I'm not mad. I'm just focused. But I do kind of get that like scrunch face, like, I look like an angry little gremlin. But when somebody comes up to my desk and I can tell they want to, talk to me, either A, I don't engage because I'm busy and I'll kind of toss them like a tight little smile, which my body language is signaling go away. Or I make sure I kind of turn and I relax my face and I do a little smile that says, hello. I'm not mean. I just look like this. So be cognizant of that. Another way.
It's a fine line between faking it and really doing it. But again, and it's if you're a person that has always got a grumpy look on your face, like whether it is natural or not,
the world will respond.
The world is responding to that. So if you're wanting to be more approachable,
that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And again, I know this is a sensitive topic because
you don't care about being approachable. Then why are you listening to this podcast?
Well, that's true. Go do something else. Your time is valuable. But I do think this is a more sensitive topic too, being told to smile, because obviously women in the workplace are often told things
so
like,
touchy.
It is like often told things like, well, just be nicer. We've had some instances of that where things were like slightly mishandled, where it was like, well, could you be nicer to him, to a person at the time who worked here was a young woman.
I'm mostly thinking of men when I'm thinking about the people I know that
don't are grumpy enough. Yeah, I mean,
and then they smile, like you see them outside of work at an event or something, and you'll see them smile, and you're like, oh,
which is a whole other social issue, because I think men are generally conditioned to like be more severe and serious, and so you feel like smiling is like a sign of weakness, whereas women are being told to smile constantly because we're supposed to be ornamental.
So listen, women smile less, men smile more.
It's done.
Oh God, we've really done it now.
Well, now we're gonna get sued.
I'm sorry. Don't leave mean comments.
Or please do. I'd be happy about any comments at this point, to be quite honest.
Roast me.
I would love to be roasted by you guys.
Roast me on a subreddit.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Then I would know you guys were
Please don't do it to me. Grace only. I'm very sensitive.
Shannon, that's true. I want Shannon's roastings to be aimed towards me. All right. So the next step towards being more approachable is to get to know your coworkers' communication preferences. So this could be a very long point, and I'm going to kind of gloss over it because just for time's sake. But basically, we've talked before on this show about personality assessments, like the DISC, the Enneagram, I guess Myers-Briggs. I think it's a little bit outdated now, but all kinds of options for if your company has some sort of personality assessment tool that they use, you most likely have access to this information. And it's one that you can either take it that far and kind of look at the documentation of people's personalities and be like, okay, now I understand. Or just be attuned to humans, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to take it so far and be like, oh, I'm sorry, what's your Enneagram? I can't talk to you yet until I know what your Enneagram is so that I can prepare. Like, that's a little weird.
That's silly.
But just being attuned to like, okay, I know that generally when Lizzie has her headphones on, that means like she does not want to talk, right?
Yeah.
That's a signal to me. Whereas I know that sometimes if Jess has her headphones on, if I catch her eye, she'll take them out and it's fine. And again, those are little examples of body language that I've learned from experience and from kind of like testing it a little bit. And so I keep that information in the back of my mind. Or similarly, like I'm trying to think of a coworker who doesn't. Go ahead.
I worked at a big biotech research institute, and we had all different kinds of people. You had creatives, and you had scientists, and you had educators, and you had business people. And there was this color test that we did, and it was like 4 different colors, and it was very similar to like Enneagram or DISC or things like that. But it was extremely helpful because in marketing and communications, we had a very hard time communicating with the scientific leaders of the company because they were so different and they were so curt and they were so to the point. And we always would tend to like take it very personally. After we did this test, it was so useful because it was like they prefer this type of communication, and it was like, just be to the point. They're not mad, just to the point. And like that was actually helpful even in making small talk with them, where I knew that if I walked up to them, it's like, we don't want to talk about the weather. Literally just ask a question or comment on something. Just jump right in, you know? So I think that's another way of like understanding people's communication styles.
Yeah.
Like if there's somebody that's so different than you, like maybe try to open up a little bit into like different ways of doing things, you know? Whereas with Grace, I want to come be like, how are you? How is it going?
We're the same.
Where other people are like, don't even waste time doing that.
Yeah.
It's not like being rude. They just want to get it. If you want to talk, let's talk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's a great point. And I do feel like, again, there's a level of humility that comes with this, which is, and we get better at accepting this as reality as we get older, but not everybody is like you, right? We all, and this is normal.
It's so hard.
It is like it's the human condition to think that you are intrinsically normal, which makes sense because to you are normal, right? But the reality is that everybody is so different and they're all thinking different things and they're all reacting to things in different ways. And so I do feel like if maybe there's somebody that you're at your office that you're like, I really try to connect with them and I just can't connect with them. And you're taking it personally or you're angry at them because they're not, kind of taking the bait. I would say consider the angle of like, maybe you're just not connecting with them in the way that they would like.
Yeah.
And kind of seeing if you can, figure out a way to connect that's, like you said, either more to the point, depending on who they are, or less to the point.
Yeah.
When people come up to me, just like Shannon said a moment ago, and they just like, hey, Grace, I need this, or like very curt. Sometimes it makes me like them less. And I realize later that like, that's not them being rude. That's just how they talk. So it's kind of that same piece of like, I'm opening my mind to different communication preferences.
Absolutely.
Anywho, again, that could be a much longer conversation, but that's kind of like a shallow overview. Yeah. So another way to make yourself a little bit more, I just kicked you in the shin. To make yourself more approachable is to show empathy and understanding. So we already kind of hit on this point several times, but basically remembering that everybody is different. And, if your attempt at small talk isn't kind of received well in that moment, maybe they're having a bad day, maybe there's more going on, maybe they have a stomachache like Shannon yesterday. So there could be all kinds of things at play there. And instead of just being angry or offended or, thinking, oh, I failed, open your mind up to being more empathetic and be like, maybe it wasn't me. Maybe there's something going on with them.
Yeah. I also think this is important when you're talking to somebody that, if they've said something and it's like, you just disagree, try to come at that from a place of understanding and empathy and curiosity and not just like, all right, well, this isn't going to work or arguing with them or getting your defenses up. Like sometimes it can be as simple as somebody saying like, oh, you had that restaurant. That place is disgusting. I hate that food, like have a little like, oh, why? Like, did you have a bad experience? Or like, well, what do you like? Or, there's a way to steal that conversation as opposed to just being like offended that they don't like the restaurant that you like. This is literally conversation that I've had with, you can probably imagine who I'm talking about. It's like, there's nothing you could say that was going to go. Some people just are that way. And it's like, you can still talk to those people. Just ask questions.
Yeah.
They obviously have opinions.
Just ask questions and don't take it personally.
Don't take it personally. It's not about you.
I want to say that, of course, there are times where, you might be like, I don't know if this person likes me or not. And I will say sometimes maybe it is personal. I don't want to act like that's never a reality. Trust your gut. But again, even if it is personal, even this person, you're like, this has happened to me many times. I've heard the expression, like, you can be the juiciest peach, but there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like peaches.
I told Lizzie that yesterday. I don't know why. I don't know where it came from. But
well, it's such a good one. And I feel like I always think of myself as somebody who can be quite polarizing. Like either you like me very much or you find me very annoying. And that used to bother me. I wanted everybody to like me, because I'm kind of a big personality. And and then I realized as I got older, like there are going to be, unless the only way I can have everybody like me is if I'm milquetoast, is if I have no real personality.
And do you know what? I've tried doing that.
It doesn't work.
It holds you back.
It does. Or also you feel inauthentic. And also oftentimes there will still be people who don't like you.
Yeah, because they want you to have a bigger personality.
Yes. Or they're just resentful for whatever, their own weird personal reasons. So I've let go of this idea that I want everyone to like me. And I've instead started to like be more myself. And I have found that, what was the point I was making with this?
Be yourself.
Be yourself.
Anyway. That was a little quote from Just Friends. You're welcome.
Hello, Joyce. I think that's it. I don't remember the point that I was making.
It was good. I liked it.
But basically, people are not going to like you sometimes. And if that is the case, it might not be you. Now, if everybody is not liking you, maybe you should do some self-examination where if you're like workplace is all against you. But if there's just one person that you're just not clicking with, that's all right. That's
okay. Yeah. You're probably still going to have to talk to them. It's work, So like I said, there's ways to get around that. Like talk about neutral topics, ask them questions,
Mhm.
kind of laugh at it in your head, like,
Yes.
wow, okay. Or be okay with like expressing, especially if this person isn't equal to you.
Mhm.
Like, I know if it's like a superior, this can be a little harder, but if they're equal to you, just be like, that's so silly. Why did you say that? I love that place. Like, that's okay. You
Yeah.
don't have to
You
agree
can have
with
an
them.
opinion. Yeah.
You can still have a nice, friendly
Politely.
conversation.
Yes, exactly. And then the last kind of way that we're going to discuss about how to make yourself a little bit more approachable or how to make small talk. And this is my favorite
This is
tool.
my favorite too.
Yeah, me too. It's foolproof.
I learned this from Owen.
Did you?
Yes.
I have always inherently done this, and I realized later that like this is actually a really valuable tactic.
Yes.
Ask people questions
Yes.
about themselves. Ask them questions. That is the most surefire way
Mhm.
to keep a conversation going and ingratiate yourself with this person.
Yep.
Studies show, I mean, this is just like science backs this up, that when people, if I have a conversation with Shannon and the conversation is all about Shannon will leave the conversation with a more positive, idea of me.
Of you.
Yeah, she will like me
Yeah.
more because I've asked, because what I am signaling when I ask a lot of questions of Shannon about Shannon is that I think Shannon is important and worthy of conversation. Like the
Mhm.
topic of Shannon is an interesting one to me. So I think she is interesting and I think that she is valuable. I'm flirting
You
with you.
love me.
I do love you. But that's a great way to make and keep conversation going.
And it's a great way. I mean, this is so, like, not only are you going to take a lot from this conversation, no matter what it is, like, the more you're exposed to different people and ask them questions, they have different responses, like, you are going to be a richer, more holistic person.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is what I learned from Owen. This is what makes him so approachable and so likable outside of his CEO body language we talked
Right.
about.
Well.
But this is because when you're with him in a social situation or a networking situation, or even just hanging out at the office and he's not in his heads down
Yes.
mode, he asks so many questions and then he listens to the answer and then he asks follow-up questions that show he was listening. And then later on, he remembers the things you said, which is funny because you don't think he was really paying attention.
Yeah, because he'll be looking at his phone.
And but he was. Like,
Yeah.
he remembers things, and that makes somebody very approachable and very likable.
100%. So you may be like, well, what questions do I ask, Grace? Like, I don't even know where to start. I feel like if it's a complete stranger, like say I'm waiting for a train. I wish I waited for trains more. That's
We
not
don't
a thing that
have
happens. Yeah. But say I'm like
Also,
waiting.
it's a pandemic.
Whatever. Say I'm at the grocery store, all right? And it's a long line and I want to make conversation with the lady in front of me. My go-to is like, oh my gosh, I love your X item of clothing. Where did you get that? And then they'll tell me. And then if it's like, oh, I got it at Target, I'm like, I love Target. I got these boots there the other day, whatever. But also that's another point is that like when you start to make conversation, organically more like points to continue the conversation will show up. So Shannon, for example, if you're at a conference and you had a complete stranger sitting next to you, how would you open?
Oh, we always say like, so where do you work? Where are you from?
Where
Are you from here? Have you been to this conference before? Are you having a nice conference? Oh, where did you get the coffee? I would really like some, like, where are you staying? Are you staying in this hotel or somewhere else? Like, it's so easy to open those conversations because you're already at an event where it's about the fact that you have traveled and you networked and you're from a certain, like, that's so great. Have you heard this speaker before? Or like, what sessions have you been going to? Or like, man, these shoes are killing me. Those shoes look comfortable.
Like there's the opportunities are endless.
Yeah,
you can talk about anything.
I feel like those situations are a lot easier than just making small talk in the office.
I agree. Yeah. Well, it's like it really is like almost easier with complete strangers.
Yeah.
Because the consequences are so low. Like if it potentially goes terribly, whatever, you might not have to ever see them again. Or if it's your coworker, you're like, I've got to see so and so. Yeah. But again, the same approach can work where it's just small talk. Like it's just like, so what are you doing this weekend? What did you do last weekend? That's always the easiest kind of conversation. So those are just some options.
And I think one thing that's good too is that bring up things about yourself, like if you're just standing there talking and like you're just awkwardly standing next to somebody while you're heating up your food, you can be like, I don't know, man, this takes forever. I really have to get back. I have to leave early today to take my daughter to wherever. And then maybe they're going to say like, oh, really? What is she doing?
Just anything. It's literally anything. Yeah, no, self-disclosure, which is talking about yourself, right? Which is being like, oh, here's what I'm doing, is another way of saying like, oh, we are having a successful conversation. Like, look, we are both sharing things, right? Like on this very primordial level, we're just trying to connect with another person. And so you sharing a piece of information about yourself is like a little display of vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And then they do the same and then you feel more comfortable with each other and then you become best friends and or fall in love and get married. I've been reading a lot of novels.
Have you read The Hating Game?
No, should I?
You should. It's very cute.
Okay.
It's a little dirty.
Okay, I'm in. I'm already
But it's
in.
a very cute, and then they made a movie out of it, and the movie is very cute. So if you don't want to read it, you can just watch the movie.
Amen. You know I
think
want
it's
to
on
read
Prime.
it. Perfect. So there's a little tidbit for you guys. The hating game. I'm gonna watch that.
It's very cute. It's about these two coworkers that hate each other.
Oh, you know I love an enemies to lovers.
And they work at a publishing company.
They always freaking do. Everyone always works at a publishing company and has published books, except for me. All right, so let's talk about, so as always, we're basing this episode off of one of our blog posts, and we have a couple of things that I want to talk about because some of them cracked me up.
These questions.
I love them. So we have some examples in our blog post. You can click the link in our description. But we have some examples of some water cooler talk conversation starters. Okay, first of all, I just want you to imagine some of these. So some of the ones that we have written are, what's a food you absolutely hate? Can you imagine if you're standing next to somebody?
You just out of the blue, that's what you say.
I'd be like, I don't know. I guess Brussels sprouts. Like, and then
whatever, sprouts are good if you roast them.
Sprouts make you gassy.
Well,
there's a price to pay for all good things. All right. Wait, what's another one? Give me another good conversation starter.
All right. Do you have any hidden talents?
I'd be like, oh, wink, wink. You know I do, but it's not appropriate for the workplace.
Wow.
Mine is, I like this one too. Like just to a random person. So like, which Game of Thrones character do you relate to most? Like it's been
literally
off the
none
air
of them.
for
They're
years.
all terrible.
They are all terrible.
The one that died
Sansa
and then came back to
is
life.
my girl. Oh, Jon Snow, the one that
we have so much in common. We're both hot. We both wear fur capes
Sometimes
on the regular.
You do little buns.
I do.
On the
I
top
do
of
do
your
little
head.
buns on the top of my head.
There you go. Okay, go ahead.
Where would you go first in a zombie apocalypse after collecting your family? I like that it assumes I'm going to collect my family.
After collecting your family is in parentheses.
I actually, this is not too far off from a topic of conversation we had because we live in Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay.
And we're kind of in a tornado
That's true.
area.
That's
and so
true.
a lot of times there's like, man, the storm is coming.
Where are you going to take
your family? Like if things get bad. And I'm always like, I know where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to the Miller compound.
Yeah, well.
Because my in-laws have they have a Frady hole, a storm shelter. And they're ready, you know?
A Frady hole.
And that can be like, well, where did you go in the April 27th tornadoes? Which was like, you know, it was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Big tornado. It's one of those like, everybody can relate to that, you know?
Yeah, guys.
Or
everybody
if they're
can.
not from here, you're like, it was so terrible.
I can't relate to that.
Well, people that are from here.
That's true.
But that's another good topic of conversation where it's like, oh, well, you weren't here. Let me tell you what happened.
Can you say, how big is your Frady hole?
How big is your Frady hole?
Hey, girl, what that Frady hole do?
Man, I got some stories about the Frady hole.
I hate that we're saying Frady hole. I also like this question. What color lightsaber would you choose? Like,
none. I would get a gun.
What? I would totally take a lightsaber.
I would get one of the, what are they called? Stormtrooper guns?
The ray guns?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if I was standing at the water cooler and someone just came up to me and was like, so what color lightsaber would you choose? I'd be
honestly,
like, what
that
is
tracks.
happening?
That's something that could actually happen in this office because the IT people, the IT crowd has all the Star Wars memorabilia, which I very much respect.
That's true. Okay, go ahead. I'll do two more. You do one more. I'll do one more.
What's a movie, book, or show everyone hates but you love?
That's the one I was gonna do. What a weird question.
Why would you ask these? They're so awkward.
I know. Sorry, guys.
This is terrible
advice. You should ask all these. These are my favorite questions. What's a show or book that you hate that everyone loves? Wait, no, reverse that.
That I love that everyone hates?
Yeah. What's your answer to that?
Oh, God. Sex and the City.
Oh, the new one or all of it?
People hate on it.
Yeah.
All of it. They hate on it so much. I love it. And I know that's deeply problematic.
Well, sure.
But it's escapism.
I would say that's a good point. I feel like mine is, do you remember that show? Like I watch this and I can't get enough. Like it hurts me because it's so bad, but I loved it.
Yeah.
The Secret Life of the American Teenager.
I love that show.
They were all terrible actors.
And like, again, deeply problematic.
Deeply problematic. But I was like, I think I was a teenager when it was on air and I was watching it and I was like, what the hell?
Those shows that you watch that like you love to hate, like Girls.
Yeah. Girls? Okay.
I hated
Me too.
them.
They're all terrible people.
But I had to watch it.
Yeah, well,
it was like a train wreck.
When you started it, you finish it. Yeah, I do feel like everyone does have the same feeling about that show, though, because it's a nightmare. Okay, sorry, guys. We got a little off topic.
Wow.
Watch The Hating Game. Advice from Shannon. And stay with us because...
Not with your children.
Not with your children, because we have a good guest coming up. We have Brad on the podcast, and he is one of the best.
One of the most approachable people at this company.
The nicest, the chillest guy. He works in our operations department, and he is going to be joining us from Chicago. So stay put. We'll be right back. The Standard Office Procedures podcast is presented by Blue Summit Supplies. We're an online office supply store that puts you at the forefront of our focus by offering new career-building resources every single week. Sign up for our newsletter and visit our blog at bluesummitsupplies.com for free downloads, tools, and tips to make your job easier and more fun. All right, guys, so we are back, and I have a very special guest for you today. I'm not going to lie, he's one of my favorites. I've got Brad out of our Chicago office. Hey, Brad, how are you doing? You just took a sip of water. I'm sorry. I set you up for failure. I did kind of. I'm good. So I'm excited that you're here because obviously everyone listening knows that we spend a lot of time talking about small talk and being approachable at work and kind of how if you struggle with that, you can go ahead and get a little bit better, some kind of tips and tricks. And I always think of you, Brad, as we call you in the Huntsville office, the culture king, because you're just very warm and personable. And I think that you kind of fit into any group with ease, seemingly. And I want to know how you pull that off so well.
Luck.
I don't believe it.
Looks. No. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I think a lot of it is just kind of trying to figure out, like, gauge kind of who you're talking to. A lot of it's kind of like, a lot of it honestly has to do with once you get to know someone a little bit, like their communication styles, whether they're like, quiet, what they like to talk about. Like if you already know kind of like the, I'm very into sports, like maybe bring that up. If it's work, like just try and find kind of some common ground. At all, just to kind of is a great start, and kind of ingratiate yourself there. And then honestly, just like not being afraid to be like judged or like, come off as like this specific, macho, either like macho man or like quiet, or like kind of just get rid of like those like high school philosophies and just like everyone is just a human being that just wants to like chit chat. Everyone likes to having a conversation and making a connection. So just like not really kind of letting that go and just trying to figure out, how you can get to know anyone in kind of any situation. So super broad, but
yeah, no, I think you hit upon something really important there, which is that self-consciousness piece, right? Like I think so often we don't want to be the first one to like initiate contact sometimes because we think I don't want to bother them, or I don't know what to say, or I'm going to look like a fool, or I don't, whatever. And that all kind of it revolves around this internal sort of self-consciousness of like, I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to embarrass myself. And I can't think of a single time when someone's made like mild, benign conversation with me that I've thought, what a weirdo, like, I think it's just like you said, everybody wants connection.
Right. And even if it like comes off like a little awkward, which sometimes it does, like you can still tell that they're trying, so it's better than nothing. Like, someone comes up and like, maybe they brought something up weird and it didn't go so well, but like they tried. And like, if you just, I guess respect them for that. And then maybe next time you try and approach them, because realistically, like at work, like especially like you're going to be with these people for who knows how long. It could be 6 months or it could be 6 years. It could be, 15 or more years. So like, you never know. So making sure that you have like a connection and, with everyone, regardless of kind of how it is, and to be approachable to them. I mean, that's really important too, is to kind of open yourself up for that to be approached, especially as you kind of climb that corporate ladder and you're, a higher, executive level maybe or something, like being open and like showing other people that you're willing to talk to anyone. It doesn't really matter that, because that's another thing too, is if someone's really closed off, like, why would you even waste your time? Why would you even try? So it's a two-way street. There's one side has to try, but the other side has to be open to it too. And that's really important too, is making yourself approachable as well. Not having that like, oh, well, he's going to, say something about me or talk, about something, behind my back because of what I said. Like, set yourself up to be approachable, have someone come up to you and like feel comfortable talking to you. I mean, that's a huge, huge part of that as well.
Yeah. And so just a minute ago, Shannon and I kind of touched on that as far as like how to make yourself approachable, which is things like body language, right? And I know it sounds cheesy, and a lot of women, we don't like being told to smile by random strangers, but it is like, having like a bit of a positive countenance or like a mild smile or however you want to phrase it on your face makes you more approachable. But I like that you're talking about making small talk from the standpoint, not only of the person who is making the small talk, which is kind of what we've been focusing on this episode, but also as the person receiving it, right? So you just made a really good point, which is if somebody is trying to connect with you, give them some grace, right? You said, even if it comes out kind of awkward or they kind of flub their words or it's not the smoothest start, you as the person who is kind of receiving this, give them some grace and, meet them where they are. And I think that's something that's a really important piece of it.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe it's not 50-50, but 60-40, like the person approaching kind of has, is the one that's approaching, but but like open yourself up when that happens. And maybe it's not the right time, and like just be open about that too. Like if someone is like getting ready to approach you or come to your office, maybe for instance, like, and it's not a good time, like just be upfront. Like I would love to, talk later, but unfortunately I have something coming up, something like that too. But yeah, being approachable as well. Again, like you said, with like the smile, honestly, like your body language, like just like being positive, not having your arms crossed and like looking down, like kind of having your body language, you're looking towards them, kind of mimicking as well, kind of what they're doing, as far as like, if they're, touching their face or nervous or whatever, maybe like doing that. So, I don't know, trying to make that person comfortable as well. I feel like is so important. And I mean, that's really the difference between like someone willing to go back and talk to you and not is that first time, even if it went awkward, if you were open to it and you were nice about it, like I'll go back and I'll give it a second shot maybe.
So you just brought up something that I'm really glad that you brought up you said mimicking, but you're describing the psychological like experience of mirroring and how important, mirroring is actually like, it is a proven thing that we as humans, especially in early developmental stages, like when we're babies or toddlers, when we are mirrored. So if I smile at you and you smile back, that's feedback telling me that this is a good interaction, or that you are, not only is this a good interaction, if I frown at you and you frown back sympathetically, like, oh, you're sad, now I'm sad, that is telling me that A, you're validating my feelings, and B, we are connecting on an emotional level. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up, because we're talking a lot about, like verbal communication, but all the things that you say non-verbally with your body language, with your facial expressions, those are a really big part of communication as well, that I think we tend to kind of forget about when we talk about how to have better communication, especially when it comes to small talk, which generally connotes communication between two people who aren't that intimate yet. Like they don't really know each other that well. There's a level of strangeness there, and mirroring is so important. Like I like the point you made. You said when someone's a little bit nervous and they seem visibly nervous, kind of mirroring, not trying to copy their movement like Simon says, but kind of like either relaxing your posture a little bit or trying to like show them non-verbally, like this is a safe space. Like I'm not judging you. I think that's a really big part of it. Don't you?
I think it's almost more important, honestly, than like what's actually said. I mean, obviously what's being said is important too, but like, again, like being like open to like, like not kind of holding yourself off, not having your arms crossed, not like, a lot of times at the my last job at the water cooler, if you will, it was a lot of like people like chit chatting with you and it felt nice. And then they do like the classic, like look down at their watch and it's like, like just stuff like that. Like, and it's a subtle, you don't even think about it, but like instantly I pick up like, okay, this person wants to be done. And sometimes the conversation is just done and maybe that's a good out, but like picking up on that is very important too, as far as small talk, because it's small talk, right? So overdoing it becomes like not exactly what you don't want. You kind of want just a few minutes, 2-3 minutes, a couple points. And so like picking up on those cues of also when to end is also important, because overextending your stay in any kind of sense, but especially in small talk and especially at the workplace is really challenging, because a lot of times people will go, grab a coffee at, 3:15 and they've got a meeting at 3:20 or 3:30. They don't have 20 minutes to talk to. So kind of picking up on those nonverbal cues as well as for like the end of the conversation, or if they're enjoying it too, nodding along kind of exactly like just when you're having a normal conversation. Like, yes, I understand what you're saying. I'm following along. I'm not just kind of thinking about nothing and then randomly just gonna like give you an answer. So I almost think it's more important than what's actually being spoken about at times as well.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up kind of how to exit a conversation, because I think that's part of it that we haven't really talked about in too much detail. But, what you said about checking phones or watches, I get on to Owen about this because we'll be having a meeting and we'll be drawing to like the end of the meeting time, right? Say it ends at 3:00. It's like 2:57. We're still talking and he's starting to like turn and like type on his computer. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm being dismissed, so I'll go. Like I have stopped before mid-sentence and just like been like, all right, well, and like gathered my stuff. And I will say it, and he's gotten better about this. I'm picking on him and he's gotten better about it. But I had to tell him, I was like, when you do that, it makes me feel like it's very dismissive. It's not a kind way to signify the end of a conversation. Whereas I feel like, and I'm kind of the points now are kind of overlapping a little bit, but you said something about just being honest. Like, I do think that being very honest and open about like us, like your own humanity, in the sense that, say you say something awkward, say you flub a word and you're like, oh my gosh, sorry. Like my tongue is tied today. You're saying like, that was on me. Haha. We're all silly. We make mistakes, whatever. Or similarly, oh, I'm so sorry. I wish I could talk about this, but I've got to go, like that's understandable. That's much better than you sort of turning and like checking out of the conversation towards the end, which tells me that this wasn't important to you in the beginning or in the first place. But now if you say, look, I'm enjoying this conversation, but I got to go, it doesn't have to be that like clinical. You don't have to say, I have had a good time and now it's time for me to leave, but just some indicator that I'm not just blowing you off. Right.
Right. Yeah. Like you don't want to be like, Zuckerberg, like you're not just a robot.
Person.
But yeah, and especially at work too, people get it. People totally get it. But like just a small comment like that, like, hey, love to talk more. Unfortunately, I got to run. I got a meeting, or I got to run. Like people get it at work too. So it's a very easy exit. But like exactly like you said, like you don't feel like that was like a wasted conversation or like, I wasted that person's time. And then you think about it for like 3 weeks and judge yourself about everything you said. Like you don't have to do it. Don't like, it's just more like, I enjoyed this. This was great. I'm really sorry. I just got to run. So yeah, that's a very important way too. Everyone knows like person that comes to your desk that just won't leave. And then like, sometimes it's just like, you could start working and they'll still talk and they just don't get it. And like, those people might be nice and they have good intentions, but like, you just have to be very like, not subtle with those type of people. If they don't pick up on it, on your subtlety real quick, it's like, hey, awesome. Like, thanks so much. It was great. Talking, chit chatting. Unfortunately, I had this like project due. I have X, Y, Z, just a quick exit. Because no one likes that person that just hangs around their desk, especially at work when you've got something to do or deadlines or, things like that. So
I've definitely been that person before where I'm like, so what are we going to talk about next? And they're like, Grace, my job. I have to do my job.
Well, sometimes like you both are, you have that time. Sometimes it's slow, so like, yes, we do. I do have 20 or 30 minutes to talk right now and decompress before I get back into this or before I start this new idea. But sometimes you don't, and again, I work in supply chain. So a lot of times our stuff's very deadline driven. So it's like, hey, I am enjoying this conversation, but I have this due at 4:00 today. And it is, I got 30 minutes to get this done. So it depends, I think, on the roles in the day as well. But like, just again, like if you can and you want to just keep, chit chatting, but a lot of times just a subtle or a quick, like, this was great. Let's pick up on this. Let's, put a pin in it. I got to run and do this. We'll pick this back up later, just something like that. So yeah, you're letting them know I did enjoy this conversation. Unfortunately, I just got to run real quick. And that's the thing. Small talk is quick and it's supposed to be just very top level. It's not usually very like deep conversation. Usually at that point, like you're very friendly with someone, and I do, small talk, you can provide personal information for sure. But there's like a fine line there, between the small talk and then getting like very deep with someone.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is very like read the room, it's very intuition based where like there's no like, here's how you do it correctly. It's very much it's going to vary by instance and by person. And by, like you said, by what day is it, what time of the day. So I would say, trust your gut. And if you're like, but Grace, that's the whole problem. I don't trust my gut. I would say have a little more faith, in yourself than I think you think you do. Like you're capable of these things. And again, like Brad mentioned, one kind of foolproof way to diffuse, if you feel like I tried to make small talk, it went really awkwardly. Now, I'm the office, they think I'm weird, whatever. Diffuse the situation by being like, oh man, I feel like I wasn't in top form last week. And you can kind of make a joke out of it, right? And like, maybe they'll be like, oh, I didn't notice. I feel like more often than not, when you say, oh man, I did this weird faux pas, people will be like, oh, I didn't even notice,
Yeah, either that or they'll laugh too. Be like, yeah, it was kind of weird. And then you have that instant connection of like, that was kind of weird. I'm sorry. Like, can we just have I tried. And like that other person acknowledging that with the laugh, right? Even though they are laughing, it's like, yeah. And I find that that's one of the easiest ways to do it is to kind of almost not make fun, but almost like poke fun at yourself.
Yeah.
Of like, well, I tried last week to make small talk with, the new CTO, and it went horribly. And then you walk in like, hey, Joe, I tried to make small talk with you last week. Honestly, it was just really awkward. Wanted to apologize. I was just trying to get to know you and, blah, 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 go from there. And then again, like, that person 9 times out of 10 is either, like you said, didn't even realize, like, didn't even notice, didn't even faze me, or yeah, it was a little weird. No worries. I appreciate you trying out or, reaching out and trying. Cause that takes a lot of, it takes a lot to.
So that's just a lot of guts and a little bit of a humility, right? You're humbling yourself and you're saying, hey, look, we all kind of make mistakes. Haha. People are so weird. Let's move on. And I do think that self-deprecation is like kind of within moderation. I have a couple friends who like go way too hard and they self-deprecate. And I'm like, you're a lovely person. Why don't you take it easy on yourself? But, kind of poking fun at yourself, like Brad was saying, that's such an equalizer and such an icebreaker. I remember I was at a job and I looked down and I was next to this woman who she's my boss, and she and I didn't have like the warmest relationship. And I looked down and I was wearing two different shoes, and they were pretty close. Like one was black and one was navy blue, but they were different. And I just looked down and I was like, huh. And I said like something like that tracks. And she laughed. And then like, it's so silly, but like that little icebreaker that showed her that I didn't take myself too seriously, that I was willing to laugh at myself. Like it opened, the conversation. Then we ended up having a, relatively friendly relationship moving forward. So I feel like there are levels of self-deprecation where you can sort of use it as an icebreaker, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Within reason. I mean, you don't need to like put yourself on blast.
No.
So, like a quick thing, like, like you said with the shoes, like clearly you just got dressed in the dark. Or I've done like the classic, like the second you take one bite of breakfast and it's like on your lap already, and like the person next to you or whoever saw it, and it's just like, what else can you do but just laugh? Like, yeah, like I'm a human. This happens. Like literally, not ideal at work, especially considering I now have to walk around in dirty clothes for the rest of the day. But it's also like you said, like an icebreaker for anyone new. It's like, wow, classic. And then that part's like, wow, I literally did that last week, and then boom, instant connection. You start just like that, and it's just something small. But yeah, I mean, there's no need to put yourself on blast.
No. And I think you made a great point, which is like you said, and like everybody else has been there, right? What else like can you relate to quicker than the sensation of having made like a kind of a gaffe before? Like we've all done that. We've all done something or said something that we're like, oh my God, why did I say that? And everybody can relate to that feeling. And it does like humanize you in their eyes. And I could go much deeper into the importance of humanizing yourself, but that's like a different podcast. But yeah, no, I think that's great. So Brad, I have one last question for you. I want you to think of a situation where you would be completely out of your element. Like you're with a group of people that you have basically nothing in common with, and you have no idea how you're going to socialize, and you're just dropped in the middle and they're like, okay, Brad, make small talk. What do you do?
Try and read the room. First, try and figure out kind of like maybe what the topic of conversation will be. If everyone's in suits, maybe it's going to be like more of like a business type atmosphere. If everyone's in golf stuff, maybe it's golf. Something like that. But really, I try and find common ground, or like something very basic to just chit chat with. And one thing that's just super easy is like the weather. Like everyone's got an opinion on it or whatever, and that's one of the things like when I started working as a kid, and I started at a golf course, and it was like a country club. So I would talk to like these higher end people who are like basically, C-level executives. And I'm like a 16, 17-year-old kid, just kind of taking their bag out of their trunk and setting it up kind of where they want. But like, weather was a good one because again, that's like, there's this like very successful doctor and then me. I'm like a 16-year-old kid, but like, what did we have in common? Literally nothing. I couldn't even drive yet at the time, like when they're dropping stuff off, but like weather or, anything that you can just like kind of get your foot in the door and really just need like one or two sentences and that's it. And then either it's going to take off from there or not, like, oh, is it going to rain today? It's like, someone says like, is it going to rain today? Like, oh, not if you bring your umbrella. Like, just like, something like that, or just, and again, a lot of it's practice too, but if you're dropped in, I think the most important thing is reading the room, maybe picking something like common to just talk about. If you don't know, if they're talking about business, maybe you pop in and just ask questions. People love to talk about themselves as well. So worst case scenario, you could just ask about someone else. Everyone loves to just rant about themselves, talk about their job, talk about whatever. So worst case scenario, just ask someone like, hey, what's going on here? What's this meeting? What's everyone here for? And then typically you'll get more information from there, and then hopefully you can go from there. And really a lot of this just comes from practice. Again, like I had a lot of practice at the golf course. My last job, I spoke to just very different levels of people, from truck drivers to executive levels. So you have to kind of change the way you talk. So, or what the topic of conversation is. So just practice as well too. I think it's really important, and just kind of like, kind of just not really caring. Really, again, most of the people aren't going to remember that conversation anyway. So just be confident and go in and try and find some common ground. That's really the big thing.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I'm glad that you brought up questions, asking questions. I think that's always the best default for when you're like, I don't know what to say next. You hit the nail on the head. We talked about, Shannon and I talked about this early on the episode, but that is like my go-to. And it's like you said, I don't really think about it. I don't mean to ask a lot of questions. I just know that that's like instinctually how to keep conversation going, is to be like, so what are you doing here? What do you like to do? Or tell me about, like, I'm sorry, what'd you say your name was? And then you just go. And oftentimes, and this is like, again, studies have shown that people, like if Brad and I had a conversation and Grace, asked Brad questions for 90% of it, Brad's going to leave feeling like we had a really positive interaction far more than if it's just a conversation about nothing, like the weather. Like the weather is a safe topic. And, the position you're describing with you being like basically working for the doctor golfer guy, it would have been weird if you were like, so tell me about yourself, whatever.
Right,
but
kids?
I do. Yeah, exactly. Do you have a wife? I do feel like there are certain instances where one's appropriate, one's not. But if you can ask questions, people like that. That makes them like you more if you ask them questions about themselves, which is
everyone, because the answer. It's about you, so you get to answer that, and then you seem like the smart one too because they're asking your question. And then on top of that too, as the person who's initiating the small talk, maybe something again like with the kids, we just talked about like maybe that pops up like, oh, what are the names? What do they do? Like this happened with well, won't get into it, but like you learn something about someone like, oh, their kid does this, or like, oh, their kid plays hockey. Like, oh, wow, like I played hockey. Where did they play growing up? Like, so then there's like, it spins off from that. And then, then again, it's not the awkward, like 2 sentences and then it's quiet. It kind of, goes, and maybe it fizzles out and it's over. You're not going to connect with everyone realistically. I mean, you want to go in confidently. You want to think that that's the case, but sometimes people just aren't in the right mood, or they're just maybe not in connection mode. Maybe they just showed up because they had to, or whatever the case is. So don't take it too personally as well, because that person could, again, you never know what they're going on in their life. It could be going through a rough patch or whatever the case is. So, don't take yourself too seriously, but don't take the conversation too seriously either. Most of the time that person's either A, not going to remember, or B, they're going to remember and love it. Or C, they're in a bad mood and they're not going to remember it anyway. So
yeah. It's not a reflection on you. I think it's the point that you're making. If you're having a million conversations and they're all going terribly and you're like, okay, maybe it is me, that's one thing. But if you're like, I've had a couple of conversations and that one tanked, that's not a reflection on you as a human being. That's just all right.
That person could have been in a bad mood. Maybe it could have been you too. It was just a very awkward question. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Yeah. But the only way to get over that is to try, because you never know. And then to practice. That's really the best way to kind of get the hang of this. You can't do this with your friends because you know about them. It's hard to do this with your family because you really kind of have to just do it with random strangers, and just test it out and practice. And hopefully, the first couple you pick, maybe pick someone like around your age, maybe someone that's going to be more likely to have something in common with you than someone who's maybe 50 years, your senior or junior or something, and there's going to be zero in common. Just as far as practice goes, when you first start out, maybe something, around someone your age, or maybe similar hobbies or something like that, just to hopefully, make the first couple go better when you first start practicing.
And I'm really glad you talked about practice, because we talk about this a lot on the podcast about how certain things are soft skills, and people think oftentimes that you either are or you aren't, right? You're either good at this or you're just not. And people will often say like, I'm just not good at this. I'm just not a confident person. I'm just not somebody who reads a lot. And that's a fallacy, right? That's a flawed way of thinking. And so if you're sitting there thinking like, I'm just not good at making small talk, you can be. It's just like Brad is saying, like, you just need to practice a little bit, and just like anything else, the first time you do it, the second, third, the first couple times you do it might be like daunting, where you're like, this is, I'm super shy, I don't like talking to strangers, insert your reason here, but then you actually do it and you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad. And, there's always the option that something awesome happens where you make a new friend, or it could go all kinds of ways. But I would say, remember that this is a soft skill and this is something that you can practice and improve upon with time. Brad, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Did you have a good time?
I had a blast.
Okay, good. Will you come back?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm holding you to it.
Okay. Perfect.
We'll see you guys in a week. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Grace.
This has been a Blue Summit Supplies production. Good job, Larry.